Gift of Life, Michigan. I heard one of my colleagues earlier today refer to today as Thankful Thursday. So I'm going to borrow that from her. I'm sure she will not mind. So happy Thankful Thursday. I am thankful for those of you who are tuned in tonight watching this stream. And I am especially thankful to be joined tonight by Miss Aeisha Reese. I am so excited to have you here tonight. You are a Flint, Michigan native, which is where I am right now. So we have that sisterly connection right there. And along with being a Flint, Michigan native, you are also a two-time small bowel transplant recipient. So welcome, Aiesha. Thank you so much for being here this evening.
It's such a blessing to be here. I'm so excited.
Yes,
Oh
I've
my
been
God,
looking forward to this.
same.
Now, we hear a lot about transplant, not just here in our world, but also on the news. But a lot of times when we hear about transplant, we hear about heart transplants, kidney transplants, liver transplants, and those are great. We don't often hear about intestinal or small bowel transplants. I did a
Yeah.
little research today, and for those that don't know, an intestinal transplant, it serves as a last resort treatment for patients with intestinal failure. And currently, there are 250 people in the United States waiting for such a transplant. Um, so I am excited to hear your story. So, Aisha, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and also what led to this intestinal transplant?
Absolutely. Wow. Honestly, it's such a where do I begin? Well, honestly, it all began when I moved here to the Great Apple, the Big Apple, rather. It's the Great Apple. So as you mentioned, I'm a Flint native, and I went to Wayne State University. That's where I received my degree. I have my BFA in co-major international studies, and I moved out here to pursue the dream, the big dream that most people live to pursue. And fortunately, I was able to gain really big opportunities on Broadway. And so that was back in 2014. And initially, when I moved here, I also was going through health complications with Crohn's disease. I didn't know exactly what that was or what that consisted of, but to explain Crohn's disease, it's under an umbrella term of inflammatory bowel disease. So what that means is when there's inflammation in the intestinal wall, intestinal tract, and basically the body is attacking the intestine, and that's what causes the inflammation. So that was what was happening with myself initially when I first moved here to New York City. And I experienced tremendous pain. I can't even begin to tell you how unbearable the pain was. And the first surgery that I had, in fact, was called a temporary colostomy surgery. And so basically, the colostomy surgery, and it consists of putting a hole in which they call a stoma, in the abdominal wall that can decrease inflammation. What was happening was my intestines were so inflamed that they were
Can I
actually getting ready
interrupt
to
you really
explode.
quickly, Aisha? I'm sorry. Your connection
No,
is
it's
kind of
okay.
spotty. I think
Please.
maybe your phone might be having something to do with it.
Oh, you think that's what it is?
Maybe.
Let me see. Oh, okay.
Sorry, I just don't want people to
Huh.
miss your incredible story.
Uh, I'm so sorry. Yeah, I thought that I actually. Well, I'll just have to share the link after. I'm sorry for
That's
for people.
okay.
I just wanted to try to, yeah, share the link. Um, but anyway, it's not actually on live. Is it still moving slowly right now?
You sound perfect now. We can share the play. You can share the
Ah,
playback once it's over, but you sound great now. So maybe would you
okay, perfect.
be okay with starting over so we can hear your story from the beginning?
I totally would. I think my
Thank
sister's
you.
on. Um, if you're on, can you please share this link on my page and tag me? I feel so bad that I'm not able to actually put it there. So yeah, just if you can, thanks. Yes, please. Thank you so much for the support. My sister, my eldest sister's on. So to explain, I moved to New York City in 2014. That's when I was experiencing traumatic pain abdominally. And I moved here from Wayne State University, and I was pursuing my career on Broadway. I had big opportunities to make that happen. And so it was truly a miracle. But in the midst of that, I was going through something that I had no idea nor had I ever heard of it. And so I found out that it was Crohn's disease that was causing the pain. And Crohn's disease is what you call an inflammatory bowel disease. And pretty much what that means is it causes inflammation in the intestine. Okay. So the body is attacking the intestinal area, the intestinal wall, the intestinal tract. So that's what it means to be autoimmune, and Crohn's is an actual autoimmune. And so basically, when I found that out, I had to have an emergency surgery, which is called a temporary colostomy. And so a temporary colostomy involves a bag that's placed over a stoma. A stoma is a small area where there's an incision in the abdominal wall. And once the bag is over it, that's where the paste goes in. I'm so sorry. I see people saying that I'm breaking up. I feel like it may be my signal again. But so basically, the colostomy, it caused the inflammation to not be as treacherous as it was, and to live what you would call a normal life without pain. To be honest about the pain, it had been something I had been experiencing on and off throughout the years of my life. I just never knew that it was an actual disease that was causing it. I just thought maybe, because I consumed a lot of dairy, or I just had poor diet habits, actually, to be honest and transparent. I thought that was just a result of it. But
Mhm.
actually, it had been foreseen that I was living with that for so many years, and it was untreated for so many years, that when it hit that spark, when I moved to New York City, that's what actually did it. And so basically, when I moved here was the same year I found out about Crohn's disease. And that was a whole new journey, living with a colostomy bag and a pouch over the abdomen. And that journey involved a lot of really just learning to adapt with a brand new body. But that's when the journey for Crohn's, that whole treatment, that whole therapy, everything, my life changed for a huge, I guess I'll say, like, environmentally, physically, emotionally.
Mhm.
um, Even for myself as a performing artist, I lost contacts. I had to rebuild myself again. And it really just involved a lot of perseverance and looking
Mhm.
beyond what I actually had physically. And so what that consisted of was a treatment that I did at first every week, then
Mhm.
every month, and then every 8 weeks. So it went from that to a month to 2 months. And so that treatment was called Remicade. And Remicade is an intravenous treatment that basically reduces inflammation. And so that seemingly was doing well. And I was being treated by a gastroenterologist, and that's a doctor that does anything gastro, anything with the
Mhm.
stomach. And she was so amazing and so beautiful.
Mhm.
And the team was actually quite great that I had. I was so blessed to be a part of that and get back to my life, and performing and teaching and, doing those things. And I actually did a lot of those things in secret, in
Okay.
secrecy rather, because you are actually considered a liability in the performing world when you live under that type of situation. And no one will actually want to hire you if they find out about it, because it's considered a disability to be honest with you. And so living that way, it really changed my perspective of how, people live day to day, and you never know
Mhm.
what's lying beneath. You never know what people are going
Right.
home to. You can't just judge a book by its cover. You can't just
Mhm.
assume that, people's lives are what you see with your eyes, right? There's different type of eyes that we have to have. And that's
Right.
the eyes of knowing that everyone has situations and you never know. So we just have to go with love, go with peace, and go with treating each other with that with that love, with that peace, and with that kindness and meekness. And so after that, I was actually prepared to have a reversal surgery. So what that means is everything being reconnected again. And actually, there was a time where they kept postponing that. That was super stressful. Okay. It was super stressful because I taught at different schools. And so
Mhm.
the type of work I was doing, if I had a series of classes and if I gave it to someone, that means that I was completely out of work. And so surgeons would say, "Oh, I'm so sorry, 2 days before, we can't have the surgery. We found something, or you're swelling, and we want to figure out what's going on." So, and this was up until about 2016. And so in 2017, that's when everything turned for a huge, it was like that, when you go up a roller coaster and then
Yeah.
you put your hands up for the 90
Mhm.
degree. That's exactly what was happening, because I went whoosh straight down. It's not funny, but that's the honest visual that I could give you.
Gotcha.
That's exactly what happened, because a lot of things were, going up. A lot of things were climaxing in my life, in my career, different opportunities that were happening. And then 2 months, 3 months into the year, I went into a coma, and,
Wow.
and that was due to blood clots, and a blood clot that went from the heart to the lungs into the intestine. And basically, once it hit the intestine, um, what happened was it actually killed an artery, and then thus they lost the intestine. Now, this was after they had conducted maybe about 9 or 10 surgeries, because they were taking me in and out of the operating room constantly. And
Mhm.
so I actually woke up from the coma a month or two later, basically without an intestine. And when that happened, they were mentioning that there was one possible way for me to live. And
Mhm.
fortunately, my doctor knew doctors and surgeons that specialized in this rare transplant, which
Mhm.
was called the intestinal transplant. And they were saying not many cases can utilize it, but in my case, if I could make it to a certain point and to a certain degree, I would be in their care. And they were very confident about their care, because they were very, and they are amazing at
Mhm.
what they do. And so that's when a whole new journey began. And in that journey, which was a huge weight gain, the weight, right?
Right.
I went home with a, what you would call TPN. And TPN, to explain that, it is an intravenous treatment, meaning you have a central line port here.
Mhm.
With the central line port, you connect man-made nutrients. It stands for temporary parenteral nutrients, TPN. And it's basically the way that you would get the food that you need. It's not like feeding, but it's
Mhm.
actual nutrients that goes through your bloodstream. And because there's no intestine, you obviously
Mhm.
can't digest food. So
Right.
I actually did not eat for about 2.5 years. Um, and so that was a very interesting journey, and a very humbling journey. um, you never know how well you have it. You never know until those little things in life are taken away from you. You
Right.
never know. Breathing,
Mhm.
waking up, hopping into the shower, just doing these basic things, is when I realized, wow,
Things we take for granted.
took so many things for granted. I remember there was even times where I couldn't even bathe myself, because of just being bedbound constantly and having constant surgeries. And I remember I was actually reading a memoir not too long ago about how excited I was that I got a full bath. Like, it almost brought me to tears. I was like, what?
Mhm.
Where did I find this? It was unbelievable. Okay. Just so many things that we take for granted, even to eat and
Mhm.
enjoy. We have taste buds, like, it's mind blowing. Animals are just happy to eat anything. We
Right.
can enjoy a meal.
Mhm.
Unbelievable. Okay. And so I had the opportunity to really reflect and think about those things. And so the reason why I called this period the weight gain is because, when you're on the transplant list. Now, I know for those who may know of someone or people who have been on a list for liver, kidney, heart, it is a weight gain. However, for intestinal, it's a rarity. So the list is actually not that long. The list could be 9 people. It could be
Okay.
10 people. It's
Mhm.
not about the order. It's more about the specific blood type and the match of antibodies and white blood cells. That's what matters to the
Mhm.
T. It has to be to the T, like to a science. They have it down to a science, okay? And so it's not about, like, how someone can say, oh, I'm 450 on the list.
Mhm.
You could be the last one on the list, but if a match comes, you're the last one that gets transplanted. It doesn't matter. You're just on that list and you just so happen to have a number, but whoever, happens to come up, you come up.
Mhm.
But the thing that makes it the weight gain is the fact that, what I found out about my transplant earlier on is that it's based on the anatomy. It's based on your body density. And so because I have a very petite frame,
Mhm.
um, that means that for me, my donors will actually be infants or toddlers. And so, what that actually means is that these are um, children or babies or infants that have passed due to traumatic incidences. And the parents have agreed to allow their children's organs to be used to save someone's lives.
Mhm.
Now, I mean, that in itself is, truly emotional. And you don't really know how to take that in when they're telling you all this information. And in
Right.
fact, even when they give you phone calls, they have to tell you every detail about what happened, what time, everything about the donor, which is actually a child. And so it's just it's a lot. It's a lot to take in, because at one point you're thinking, I want to move on with my life. I can't live this way. And something I didn't mention about the TPN is that this was something that had to be done every single day, 14 to 16 hours.
Oh
Every
wow.
single day from 14 to 16 hours. So that meant that any time in the day was extremely, extremely limited. And I
Mhm.
had to be very specific with what I was going to do. You know, it definitely helped me with my time management skills. I'll be honest with
I imagine.
okay? Especially living in New York City, okay? Because of the hustle and bustle, you have to know exactly where you're going to go, X, Y, and Z. But yes, so the weight gain, there are times where you'll get a phone call and they say, Miss Reese, you're coming in, your donor, they'll tell you what happened to, the infant or the child. And then suddenly you get there to the hospital and they'll let you know you have a bed. And then as soon as you get in there, they'll say, actually, I'm so sorry. Maybe you sat in there for 8 hours and you're expecting the surgery to happen at 9 a.m. the next day. And then they call you at 3 a.m. and say, I'm so sorry. When the doctors, they went to retrieve the transplant, to retrieve the organ, the mother changed her mind. She said she couldn't take it. She changed her mind. And they have the right to change their mind all the way up until even if they cut in, they still can say no. And so that was the emotional roller coaster. Because it's like, obviously you want to move on with your life, but then it's like, oh, you don't know how to feel because this is the life of someone else, and you can't really blame the parent at the same time. So it's a very difficult situation to be placed in because you really don't know. It's like it's like, what do I want?
Right.
What do I want? Is this okay?
Hmm. Well, I'm gonna reference one of the questions that's coming in from our audience right now. Someone wants to know, was there ever a time that you wanted to give up during this process?
Many times. Many times that I wanted to give up. But it's interesting because even though I wanted to give up, I never vocalized it. There was something inside. It was a massive power inside. And I know you know what I'm talking about.
Hmm.
It was a spirit inside that really pulled me. Like, I actually, it's so interesting that they asked that question because I just met and had dinner with a friend celebrating her birthday. And we were at West Village here in New York City. And I looked at a restaurant and it took me back to 2 years ago of where I was in my life. And I remember we were talking, and I in that moment I almost started to cry. I was like, oh my God. I was like, excuse me. I was like, God is so good because I remember exactly where I was 2 years ago when I had the central line, when I had that. And I was like, and I was so happy. I was so joyous. I was so happy. And I was like, I don't even understand how I was so happy in that time because I had nothing.
Hmm.
I had nothing, but I did have something. I call it, I had the Holy Spirit inside of me. It kept me peaceful. It kept me grounded. It kept me joyous. So even though my emotions felt like I wanted to give up, the spiritual side of me said, oh no, this is not it. This is not your life. It wouldn't allow me to accept the thought that I thought about giving up. It was almost as if that thought of giving up was a mirage.
Hmm.
It was a mirage in my mind. So because it was such a loud voice in my head, it gave me this zeal and this energy to
Hmm.
be like, on fire. And so a lot of people that I encountered had no idea that I was even waiting for a transplant. They were like, what? Is this a joke? Am I being punked? I was like, I wish it was, but no, it's not.
Hmm.
But that fire, I would call it that fire that lived inside of me, it was so much more powerful than that thought. And so because of that fire, that's what guided me. And the love and the support of the people that were around me. That's called agape. That's God's unconditional love. That's what literally pushed me through it. And so I couldn't even allow myself to believe that
Hmm.
because that voice was so loud. That power was so loud resonating inside. And so, yeah, that's what I would say to answer it. Of course I did. But the spirit that was inside was so much more powerful. So
Wow,
it drove me through.
that is amazing. So tell me what it was like to actually get that phone call saying that there was an intestinal transplant waiting for you, and it actually went through that time. Tell me what that was like.
Oh my God, I will never forget that moment. I remember I had just moved into Manhattan because for years I lived in Brooklyn. And I was going through so much with my living situation and, just dealing with people that, God bless them, that, had different mental situations. And it was a lot. And I just remember that I moved to Manhattan, the Upper East Side. And I remember that I had just received a phone call from a mentor. And I remember I was telling her, I said, how you have those moments when you're a little down.
Hmm.
And I was feeling a little down. And I said, you know what? I love God. I said, if I want whatever he wants, I said, if he doesn't want me to move forward, if he wants this, if he doesn't want me to pursue my career, you know what? I'm fine with it. As long as I can, continue to live to inspire others with my life. I'm okay with it. And I remember, I remember this person is so funny. She's on TV. She's on TV all the time too, by God's grace. But I remember this person. She was like, "That's not your life." She's like, "No, no, no, no. That's not your life, and you're not going to receive that. That's not who you are. She's like, this time was only a test. That is not who you are. That's not your life. And I remember as soon as I got off the phone with her, I received the phone call. And when I received that phone call, first of all, that was probably the second time that they attempted to call me, because the first time I was in a conference or something. So I
Mhm.
missed it. But that time they said, oh, Miss Reese, we wanted to let you know that, we got this offer for you. And I knew this was the one, because I just felt the peace in his voice. I felt the excitement. And I felt just a supernatural ease. And it made sense because guess what? I realized everything was prepared. I lived right down the street from the hospital. I still do right now, East 94th Street. Everything up until then had been planned, not by me,
Mhm.
but it was just geniusly packaged. I mean, obviously, there was a lot of trauma, a lot of drama that happened prior to that, but it made it all worth it. It was like as soon as I was in the nest where I needed to be, boom, the phone call was made. Boom, I had a night to pack everything. Boom, I just, went in a cab just 5 minutes away, right down the street. And I knew it was there. I knew that was it. I felt it. And what made it even more of a remnant was the fact that it was on May 19th, 2019. And so it was a double portion of 19. And if you add 1 and 9 together, you get 10. And 10 represents perfection. So I said, this is the double portion of perfection day. And so so that night I went in and it was, and I woke up and it was, I literally heard, and I literally heard God's voice say, this is the one. This is the one. And I heard it, and I remember I had such peace in my heart when I heard it. And yeah, another thing that I heard was that everything that you thought was taken away from you will be added onto you sevenfold. That was another thing that I heard. So basically, what that's saying is that if there's anything you feel that you missed out on, that you didn't get, opportunities that you feel like you've been held back on, that's no such thing. It's happening right now.
Mhm.
Everything. You were exactly where you're supposed to be, and you're going to be exactly where I need you to be for all those things to happen.
You're giving me goosebumps just listening to this. That's so amazing. Now, can you tell us what the healing process was like for you? So you received your transplant. What was that like the next day?
Yes. Oh man. So the healing process. So for the intestinal transplant, they have to obviously test the function of how your intestine is, right? And so
Mhm.
um because the main function is based on digestion, and also that comes from obviously your food intake. There's different stages that they have to take you through. So I remember once I made it out of the ICU unit, they bring you to another unit, an observational unit. And when you're there, you only do liquids, clear liquids. And then once you pass that stage and you're doing fine, then you go to another stage where things are really soft but liquids. And then once you pass that stage, then you go to another stage. But even before you get to the stages, I know for some people who know anything about anything gastro, there's the NG tube that you have, which an NG tube is something that's there to make sure that it's basically from here it goes all the way down the esophagus and into the actual stomach. And what it does is it makes sure that all the bile is
Mhm.
at the regular color and function that it needs to be at a healthy function. And it's a way for them to monitor and to make sure that everything is okay. And so when they feel confident in that, then that's when they take it out. And that actually happened sooner than what I thought. Because I remember when my surgeon, when he came up, he was like, how do you feel? And then he was like, okay, I'll try tomorrow. And then he goes, how do you feel? And then I was like, please take it out. He's like, okay. because it's not a comfortable feeling for those
Mm-hmm.
who may know about that. It's not a comfortable feeling, but if you can, they test it by seeing if you can go without it being held on to suction. And so basically the tube that goes all the way down, they connect it to a suctional wall to make sure all of that, is flowing down there in the stomach, with the bile and the stomach juices. And so
Okay.
they'll take it off of the suction. And if you don't vomit, within X amount of hours, then they know they're ready to let you off of it. And so then the stages come with the food, and then you make it to the final stage, which is with the hard food. And they also check your stool, which is very important because diarrhea stool. Excuse me for talking about this, but that's kind of what it is when you're dealing with
Mm-hmm.
anything with the intestine, right? It sounds gross, but the any loose stool rather is not a
Mm-hmm.
good sign because it shows dehydration. So they encourage a lot of G2 intake. Gatorade, G2 means basically Gatorade that's low in sugar, but the electrolytes are what help with the nutrients and in containing the nutrients as well as the hydration. It's a good hydration
Okay.
source and electrolyte source.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. So after, if I remember correctly, you said you went 2 years on that TPN, not eating any type of food. What was
Oof.
that like to go 2 years of having no food to having your first bite of, what was your first bite of solid food? Do you remember what it was?
I do. I do remember. My first bite of food was, I believe it was probably chicken noodle soup. I believe it was chicken noodle soup. And chicken noodle soup with the saltine crackers,
Mm-hmm.
unsalted. That was my first actual like meal aside from Jello, because I was doing that at first, but then solid wise, it was the chicken noodle soup with the unsalted saltine carrot cracker. Wow. To be honest with you, you don't think about it at first, in the earlier periods of it, because you're still in shock by the fact that you have to do this treatment. Okay. So for me, it was just, I remember I was such a nerd. I will never forget the first time I went home with, the TPN, because not only did I have this, but I also had these huge drains. Okay. I didn't mention that, but these drains, because if you don't have an obvious intestine, the stomach juices and fluid have to go somewhere. So I had a B drain and a G drain and a D drain. One that was connected to my thigh and one that like pierced out of the side of my abdominal wall.
Okay.
So one was so large, I remember I had to carry it in a bag. And then the other one I had to like strap to my leg. And so that was just, honestly, I was so focused on trying to adapt to that. You can't even wrap your mind around the fact that you even, that would have been an extra thing, you know what I mean? But the actual journey of not eating, was extremely humbling. Also, too, for people who may, which is most people, lack the understanding of even knowing that someone's waiting for an intestinal transplant, socially, it was very discouraging. Just to be honest, for me at that time in my life, I had a lot of support, but also when there's gatherings, people eat. And
Mm-hmm.
I know they didn't mean to, but, sometimes it actually did get to me, even though for me, I didn't want anyone to feel odd around me. I didn't want that to happen. But I mean, it was very difficult. It was extremely hard to see that, and in fact, as it got closer, there were times where I actually had this wild phenomena where I started to feel a little hungry, which my doctors told me was a good sign because it meant that my stomach was healing, like the abdominal area in the stomach was healing. That was great, but it also wasn't. It's not great that you're starving yourself, or you're feeling like you're starving yourself. So that was the part that got challenging to me. And so um my relationship with God had to be intense, because there were times where, I did get frustrated. I'll share one story. Actually, I'll never forget one time. I think I've shared this with one person, but I want to share it. I never forgot. I was so angry because I couldn't eat that I made a decision. I said, you know what? I'm going to be a normal person today. My wise idea. I'm going to be a normal person today. Okay. I was like, I got on the train and, I went somewhere, and I went to, what's the place? Chipotle. Okay. I was like, and I sat in there and I said, you know what? I'm going to get whatever I want to get, like a normal person who sits down and eats. I was so fed up. I was like, no, I'm going to do it. So I ordered something and I looked at that, whatever those bowls are. And I said, yeah, I'm going to get that bowl. Okay. And I remember I said, you know what? I'm going to eat this. So I took it and I ate some of it. And I was like, huh, there. I ate it, nothing happened to me. Now I'm going to do something else another normal person would do in New York City. What's the other famous place? Starbucks. So I'll go to Starbucks. These are the worst options, by the way. Okay. Just noting that, the worst options. Okay. So I went to Starbucks and I said, I'm going to get a chai tea latte because that's what I would get. Okay. So I drink a little bit of that. So I remember I'm on my way back home and I'm like, yeah, I did what I wanted to do. And I'll never forget, as when I got on the train, I felt everything that I was eating just coming up like this. And I remember I had like a bag that was with me and I was like, oh my God, So I go into the bag and then suddenly it was, let me tell you, it was a paper brown bag, right? Because that's how the kind of bags they have at Chipotle are. And, and guess what? As I'm like, in the bag, it's a paper bag. So it goes through. So now I'm embarrassed because it's like everywhere. And I'm like, great. Now I'm one of those people in New York City that everybody looks at. I don't know if anyone's been in New York City or you've ridden the trains, but there's always stuff happening. Okay. It's always stuff happening. You're like, when things happen, you're like, okay, I don't want to go around that person. Okay, let me get away from that person. You know what I mean? I was that person. Okay, I was that person that people were probably like, oh my God, So that happened to me. And I remember, and to my surprise, I remember I was so embarrassed. Do you know that these women, they saw me and they ran to me and they started to wipe my face and they grabbed tissue and they started to wipe me and they didn't even care that I had, the waste on my face, and they were just helping me clean. And do you know that changed my entire perspective on anyone I saw? I said, you know what? Not only did I make a fool of myself and I made a decision that, you know what, I'm going to do what I want to do, I still had such grace in that moment. And I said, I promise I will never judge another person based on whatever they're going through, because you never know what anyone's going through, because those people were so kind to me. And that's how we have to be. We have to have that kind, that enduring and loving spirit, just like those women had for me. They didn't judge me. They just came and they cleaned me up immediately. And I'll never forget that moment. So there were challenging times, but I was able to brace myself. And actually there was a time where there was something that happened where I was able to miraculously eat. I don't know how that happened, but it was like, it had to be very small portions. So, but that was when I was just being extremely rebellious. Okay. But yeah.
I am glad those women were on the train for you. That is extremely kind and very touching. And I'm glad that you experienced that. Yeah. We have a question from Jean on Facebook, and she wants to know how long in between your first and second transplant?
Yes, I did not mention that. So there's actually a 2-year difference. So the first transplant that I had received was actually the year I went into the coma. So there were many calls, but shortly after leaving the hospital the first time, when I went into the coma and I got transferred to the hospital that helped with the transplantation, I was called in July, actually on my mother's birthday, July 26th. And I remember that I had that transplant and it seemed well, but there were complications that happened. It was a lot of different things that went on. And so I only had that for 2 weeks. So around the time of my birthday was actually the time when they had to remove that transplant. And it was because there was a blood clot that had gotten there and the organ unfortunately died. So they had to remove it. So from that point until 2019. So yeah, that was about almost 2 years. Yeah, between
Okay.
that time.
Okay.
Mhm.
Now, Aisha, you've gone through a lot and you've come out on the other side and your spirit is just so beautiful. If there is someone watching right now who is waiting for a transplant, what would you say to them to help them stay encouraged?
Build healthy distractions. Create healthy distractions. What do I mean by that? I mean, you have to involve yourself not with self. Because the thing is that when you're focused on yourself, you become a victim. You sit in the victor seat. But you have to realize that you're more than a conqueror. You're not the victim, you're a victor. You have to say to yourself, no, no, I will get through this. First is having that mindset. Having an athlete mind, which I call having the mind of Christ, which says, no, I'm not accepting this. No, I will have this and I will be this. So for me, I had to make a decision and say, you know what? This, whatever this is just so that I can be relatable. It's just so that I can be a voice for many people. And I was able to meet so many different people because of what I had been through. And the short period of time, I mean, it was a period of time that took up a lot of time, but I met people that had been through, what I had been through there, maybe through years, but I maybe went through all of that in like 3 years. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So many things were birthed. What I've learned is that in your trials, treasures are birthed. It's so true because in those growth moments is the gateway to your purpose. Is what actually shows you you're more than what you think. I thought it was just a performer. I thought it was meant to just be on Broadway. But I realize now I'm so much more than that. I was thinking so small. I was thinking way too small. During that time, I was inspired with the love and support of my community, the Rocks Worldwide. We say, you know what? No, we're going to go to the hospitals. We're based on the arts. We're going to play music and inspire them. We're going to use our giftings. We're going to show them the love of God. That's God. And first it was transplantation patients, but then it became all patients. And we went from the original hospital I started with, and then we went to all the hospitals in the greater New York City area, from Queens to Brooklyn to the Bronx, Manhattan. We were everywhere. And it became a ministry. At that time, there was a church that was birthed in my apartment. So my focus wasn't even on me, it was on the lives of others. I became invested in the lives of other people. I became invested in seeing people, their dreams come true. And so because I was able to focus on that, that's what literally drove me through and drove me through the success. When you're focused on others, you'll turn around and everything will be given to you. You have to stay focused on healthy distractions because there will be distractions, but you need the healthy distractions, the things that are going to add on to you, that are going to expand you, because there is no if, it is, and you will and you shall. And so when it happens, so many amazing things will be birthed. And so that's the greatest token advice that I can give you, because it has done nothing but brought me wealth in my life. And I'm not just talking financially, because wealth is understanding and knowing the beautiful possessions that we're blessed to have here. And I realized how blessed I was when I didn't have much. I was so blessed. And so that's really what truly allowed me to really drive through with that full force.
It's awesome. So, Aisha, if you had the opportunity to speak to your donor's family, what would you say to them?
Oh man. You know, it takes a selfless person. It really takes a selfless person to be able to grasp the understanding of a life for a life. And most importantly, it's so amazing that, this entire foundation and platform is called Gift of Life, because life is a gift. And you don't realize that until your life is on, literally, it's at an ultimatum, of, oh, this or that. And then you realize, wow, even if I had, or even if these things were happening in my life, I still had life, which is an incredible gift. Even if I didn't have everything I think I have, is an incredible gift. So I would say it takes a selfless person to be able to recognize and grasp the understanding that your life, the life of a child who did not even live for a long portion of time, but to say, you know what? Their life was lived to give you life. I would say thank you for being the definition of a true friend. The definition of a true friend is someone who is willing to give their life for another. And that's something that they basically did. They said, you know what? My child didn't live, but I know they were here. They were here in this realm. They were here on the planet so that they could give you life. That was their purpose. That's literally the story of Christ, which is really a miracle worker. It's not about religion. It's about a relationship. It's about saying, I'm giving you my life and I'm calling you my friend. And I feel that's exactly what they were. So I would just say, I love you and thank you for being the definition of a true friend, a life for a life.
Aisha, you are a delight and a gem, and your love just radiates throughout this whole screen. And I could talk to you all night because I just adore you. And I was so happy when you said yes when I asked you to do this. So thank you so much for joining us and sharing your story. Before we wrap up tonight, is there anything that you want to say, that you want to share with the audience?
Absolutely. First of all, I'm beyond thrilled and honored to be here. Yeah! Just have to say. I'm so happy to be alive. I'm so happy that I have the gift of life to be here. And I'm what I do want to say is that, that community and that family that loved me and supported me during this journey, they're the Rocks Worldwide, and we're a non-denominational group of people that love Christ and that love God. And so because of everything that's been happening this year, we do a campaign, and this campaign is called Rock a Million. And basically what it consists of is we aim to pray and spread love to millions of people all over the world. And you wouldn't believe me if I told you, but we have successfully reached and have prayed for literally over 1.4 billion people. Okay.
Wow.
I'm talking from Dubai, I'm talking from Sri Lanka, all over the world, because of what's happening, right? All these situations that are happening, and everyone wants to experience that love and that genuine support and peace. And so with the campaign, we say a really brief prayer to just cover and support and bless each other. And so I would absolutely love to share with everyone that's listening. And it's truly the thing that changed my life and allowed me to experience the gift of life in a new and fresh way. So it's literally like 15 seconds, and I'll just say it. And if you feel it in your heart, just repeat after me. Is that okay?
That's okay.
All right. So it goes like this. Heavenly Father, I come to you now just as I am, in Jesus' name. You died for me and you rose again on the third day. Holy Spirit, thank you for coming into my life, for blessing me, protecting me, making my dreams come true, and everything new. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. Yes. Yay. And
Aisha,
that's,
oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, that's it.
Thank you so much for being here with us today. Keep that passion, keep that love. I hope when this quarantine breaks that you and I can connect because I could just hang out with you forever because you are a delight and I just love and adore you so much.
Now, come on. You already know. You already know. This is happening. Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. I know that we met for a purpose and we have been great friends ever since we met last year. So
Absolutely.
I'm wishing you and your family nothing but the best from here on out. You're amazing. You're a literal miracle. So thank you so much for being
You're
here.
a miracle, and you are, and everyone that's here, and the amazing woman that helped us before. Everyone is a miracle. Okay? Everyone, if you're alive, you're a miracle.
Yes, ma'am.
So go and
All
do
right.
miracles and let them follow you.
Yes. Thank you so much, Aisha. You have been a delight. You've been wonderful.
Thank
Yes.
you so much. God bless
Yes.
you. Thank you so much. I'm so honored and obliged to be here.
Yes, of course. We're honored to have you on behalf of Gift of Life Michigan and on behalf of Gift of Life Motep. Thank you so much for your time this evening. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We'll see you again soon.
See you soon.
All right. Bye bye.
Bye.